Okay. So I guess we'll start off by just saying what we know, we've been told about the history, as far back as our great grandparents or my great grandparents. Vicki might know more about the Broussard side, but all I know about the Reaux side was that Oculi Reaux. Right, Vicki? Oculi Reaux came from New Iberia.
Yeah, I think so.
Because we are Spanish descent.
Yes.
And not French.
Yes.
That's why we say Reaux, and people ask me, why you say Reaux? It should be Reaux. I said, no, because we're Spanish.
Yeah. It should be Reaux.
Which was Riado.
You know that.
But
It's Reaux.
Reaux?
Reaux.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what it is in Spanish.
So Oculi, huh?
Well, they changed the spelling.
So it came from New Iberia, and I don't know any further back than that. But
so Oculi was born in New Iberia?
I think, yeah. He didn't move here till.
I don't know where he was born, but he must.
Yeah, he moved to Indian Bayou, and he had a house where the Supreme Rice Mill is right now. That's where his house was.
What?
So
I can't hear you, babe.
You know the camera's on?
The camera's on.
Oh.
You should have put where's your big straw hat? But so he built a house. When exactly he moved? See, Dad's passed away, so the questions we wanted to ask him is too late. But I don't know when he moved there. But we do have homestead papers that he purchased land from LeBlanc's, which is probably Philip LeBlanc's family.
Probably.
So the homestead paper is dated 1890, but it was made out to the LeBlanc. But Oculi bought it from him. So on the back of we have the original homestead paper. On the back of the homestead paper, Oculi has signed his name, meaning the title it's just like a car title. When you sell it to somebody else, you use your title and you sign your name on the back. So Oculi signed his name on the back of that homestead paper.
Right.
So we know that 1890 at least he had the land, which was made out of 160 acres, the homestead paper.
Mm-hmm.
Now, who bought, because there's almost 500 acres of property there.
Yeah.
Between Ruby, Rowena, Bebe, and Daddy, there's close to 500 acres. So I don't know, it's too late to ask anybody. We could probably find out from the courthouse, but once Oculi bought the 160, who else bought all the rest? Was it him or Papa Ferdinand, which was his son?
Right.
We don't know. I don't know that,
but we have some of the old papers here.
Yeah, some of those that go back that far.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, we can look at the charts and papers and photographs and stuff after.
Okay.
But so Ferdinand. So how much? What did Oculi farm exactly? We don't know if he actually started farming rice himself or he just had like other crops. But we know Ferdinand planted rice.
Yeah.
Because I know from stories that Daddy told.
Yes.
Because he'd get on a horse and go. He was the water boy. You want to tell that story?
Oh,
the water.
It wasn't. Okay, so Daddy's first memory of working on a farm was him being a water boy. So at 5 and 6 years old, too young to be able to get on a horse by himself. So during harvest season, my mom Reaux would fill cans of water, or whatever container they used, put the water on the horse and put Papa on the horse. And he would go in the field and give water to the men who were working. When the water was out, his daddy would put him back on the horse. He'd come back home. His mama would fill up the water cans, and then he'd go back in the farm, to the farm. That's his first memory of working on a farm. He was the water boy. That was his job. Yeah.
Then did you tell me, or he told me that he had appendicitis one year?
I don't remember
that. Griffin. That he had to miss that summer of working on the harvest. But I think at that time he was actually driving the wagon to go in the field and pick up the bundles of rice. And bring them back to the big threshing machine, which we have a picture of the thresher that would be parked. And I remember one thing Daddy told me was not everybody owned a big threshing machine.
Right.
I don't know if Ferdinand owned one or not, but it would move from farm to farm. It was a real big, long, heavy, which the picture will show, big, long, heavy piece of equipment, but not motorized. So they had to haul it from one farm to the other, I guess by mules.
By mule, I guess.
And so when one farmer was finished, they'd haul it to the next one who was ready and put it in his pasture. So the picture we have is actually in the pasture next to Fagnan's old house. In the picture.
Right.
So one of Daddy's jobs as he got older was to drive that wagon, he said, to pick up the hay, the rice in the field and bring it to the threshing machine. But one summer he had appendicitis.
I didn't know that.
And
How old do you think he
was that?
How old do you think
I don't know.
he
I don't
was?
remember how old he was. But he had to stay in bed for that whole summer after that. So let's see, and that's but I don't know. I don't know what other. And I know his daddy, Fagnan, raised sheep,
Yeah.
and so Daddy raised sheep.
So Daddy raised sheep.
Yeah. I guess it was a passed down.
And after you, then he added chickens and pigs.
So
Right.
After you made that comment.
Ferdinand had sheep.
Yeah.
You said?
Whether or not Oakleaf had it or not. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
Now I remember there being an old house where Supreme Rice Mill across the street from Fagnan's house. I don't know, and I remember being told that Gosh was a black man who was Fagnan's hard man.
hard man.
You remember Gosh?
Yes,
That
I
name
do.
Gosh. And I remember him. I remember Gosh.
Yeah, I
After
do too.
Fagnan died years
Yeah.
and years later, he'd come sometime and hunt rabbits on the land and bring his sons. But so Gosh lived in that house. It was an old house. And later, when he moved away, we used that house to store hay in.
Oh,
Yeah, it was an old house, but it was like just 2 rooms, and we'd stack it full of hay for the cattle in the winter. Now, whether or not that house was actually Oakleaf's house or not, I have
don't
no
know.
idea.
Yeah, I don't either.
And what happened to the house? I don't know if it was torn down.
We have no clue. None.
And so, and then going back to the Broussard side,
They planted right. This was
where they moved from or when they moved, yeah, we don't know.
I know that the Seymours have been in the area for ever. Their property goes all the way to 700, all the way from 700 to 343. It was at once the man owned a lot of property, and it's been divided. And people don't understand, and they lose sight of who the land originally belonged to, because when women married, the old Napoleonic law, long time ago, women lost total control of their property. And even though that was, long ago, even though now, when Gros-Pop and Ulysses and Laura married, it became known as not the Seymour property anymore, but the Broussard property. Although she owned it, because that mentality is still, and to this day, that mentality is. The Palmier property, it's not the Palmier property, it's a Seymour property. And on and on and on. She married a Palmier, so it became the Palmier property. Let's go check those charts.
You can just leave it running. We'll just make edits if we need to. Lily, if you think of questions while they're talking, just write down your questions. We can come back.
Yum.
So it's still on? I can keep talking?
Yeah.
Well, so what we have left from, let's go back to the Reaux, we have the old house still standing.
So look at
Ferdinand's old house, which was my grandfather.
And that one is the one that's near the intersection of 700 and
Yeah. When was that built? I'm sure we could find that out. But so we have the house as that we still as a memory. We have
We may have to pause just because they're talking too, so it
okay.
might pick up
not
in the
quite dark enough. And that's just something that you're going to have to judge.
And
So
Ferdinand's house is the one we have that portrait of, right? The drawing.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, I don't know who actually,
fruit. So it's going to come out wet.
Larry or Gerald had that done, but I don't know who was Vicki might know who the actual artist was.
because of
pencil
the smell.
drawing was done by
When you
me. I
walked
don't
in,
know.
you said, "Ooh, it smells good in here." Yeah. Okay. All right.
Where do you keep your water?
In the let me see. I'll show you.
All right, you can go on.
Okay, well, so we have the old house still standing.
Refrigerator, there's some at the bottom.
We also have the homestead papers from 1890, which was the original first land that O'Keefe bought. And somewhere we have some French songs taped, recorded by my grandmother, Brandy's wife, Cecilia. She liked to sing French songs, and we have that tape somewhere of the French songs. Her
What tape,
singing.
Randy?
Huh?
What tape?
The tape of my mom Reaux singing those songs.
Oh yeah.
Then on the Broussard side, we have the same house that Vicki lives in, that Ulysses built, Ulysses and Will. And we have the recipes for the tarts they're making today, which was Ulysses' wife Laura, her recipe. And I have we have the transit,
Okay.
which I was told by Daddy when he gave it to me that it was bought by Ulysses. And I looked up the serial number, and it dates back to when it was made in the early 1900s, maybe 1904 or 1905, something like that. When he bought it, I don't know, but Daddy told me he bought it to survey rice levees.
So that was Ulysses was the one who bought that.
Yes. He bought it to survey and make his own rice levees to know where to put the levees. You needed a transit. And so I'll have the transit with the box it sits in, the original paperwork, the stake that you go out and put out in the field, and the transit will find it and tell you where to put the levee. And it was handed down to Will, which is my grandfather, and handed down to Daddy, and then handed down to me. And I remember using it with Daddy to make levees. In fact, right behind here on Simon's property, we used it to make levees, that old transit. And we used it in another field, I remember Daddy and I. And we used it, Daddy and I used it when I moved my house in Scott. We needed it to add on to the house and make it level. So Daddy and I used it there. And then I've used it with Daniel to make a stream in our backyard. And I used it with Asher to find out where to make the ditch in his field. So it's been used for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 generations. And it's still working.
And still working. Yeah, that's what.
That surveying thing. I don't know if you saw.
No,
that.
it's in my closet. It's a 3 legs, which you put a thing on it and you look.
I've heard that before.
So I was telling we have that and a recipe from that generation.
From that generation, yeah.
And
Yeah.
from Ray's generation, we have the homestead papers.
Yes.
And my mom's French singing.
Yeah. So yes.
And I remember a buggy.
At my
in
Mom
that
Ray's.
at my Mom Ray's
Yeah.
house. I don't know whatever happened
Yeah.
to it.
Michelle, Jan's daughter, has the old blanket that was on that buggy.
Oh, you're kidding. I didn't know that.
No. She's got it. It's hung in her house.
Wow.
Cool. But around here, that except for in town, Abbeville, Kaplan, Indian Bayou, Maurice, it was a farming community. So you either formed if you had land, or you were in a profession that supported farming. Noe Como had a saddle shop.
Oh, yeah.
T.T. Leger had a mill.
Yeah, him.
You
yeah.
remember the mill?
And Andrew, a little rice mill.
A little rice mill. They had carpenters. Of course, there was always a need for carpenters. Shoer, farriers. So, that went on for a long time in every community. Then, when farmers were starting to go out of business, then they went to the oil fields. They worked offshore. Those were the 2 main jobs 20, 30 years ago that they had. Offshore or farming. Or then they began to go more into town, college, getting those specified. But for a long time, this was just farming.
Yeah, everybody we knew was farmer.
Yeah. Right.
All of our friends' parents were farmers, most of the time, not everyone, but
And they helped each other out.
yeah. And then we all had our own little grocery stores. You didn't go to Walmart. There was no Walmarts.
No, absolutely not.
Targets. They had Chester Bros, Gulf Station, and Andrew. So Andrew, Indian Bayou was more or less, it was a school, but it was not really a town. It was just a schoolhouse.
They had a post office now.
Oh, come on. They had a post office in Indian Bayou?
Yes. You know where the blue house is? Where the blue house on the corner? That's where the post office was.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, so there was a post
So I
office
just
and a
learned
school.
something. We had a post office.
Yes.
And then Andrew was really the closest down to us.
Yeah.
But Andrew was a more, you know how they have towns built up because of the railroad?
Yeah.
So the town built all around the railroad. What Andrew was built because of the Hunter Canal.
The Hunter Canal, right.
The Hunter Canal was an irrigation system that was made. You'd have to look at the history.
I know.
But it actually pumped water out of the Mermentau River, if I remember right, into this channel of canals they dug out.
That was amazing. Yeah.
And it must have been by hand. They didn't have big backhoes back then. All the way through Vermilion Parish, Acadia Parish. I don't know how far it went into any other parish, but it would so that they would pump water out of the big river, and to offer all the farmers to have water to put in their
crops.
And it would go right through the middle of people's property, and you would go and open up gates, and the water would water your land.
Now you had to
unless you had a water well.
You had to give the water,
Yeah.
the Hunter Canal, a portion of your crop, of course.
One-fifth.
A fifth of the crop. So when you finish your crop, selling, you still owed
A fifth.
a fifth.
And so that community they had watermen who worked the levees, who made sure the levees were not broken and fix them. And so they had little rent houses.
Yes.
They must have been 10 rent houses with all the people who worked on the Hunter Canal. And then they had the water boss.
Yes.
Who was that?
George Hebert.
Huh?
Good old George.
Oh yeah, good old George. He was the water
George
boss.
Hebert. He was the water boss.
He would, if you needed water, you went to see George, and he would go open the big valves. Like every once in a while, they'd have the great big canal would go into smaller canals and had these great big wheels that you had to open the gate up. But he had the gate at his house. You couldn't just go open the gate.
Yeah.
You had to go tell him, I need more water. He'd go put the big wheel on it and open the gate so that you could have water. And then they had, in that little town, they had Chester Bros, Gulf Station.
Mm-hmm. And of course, Leroy.
And then Leroy.
Leroy had an elementary school.
Yes, I don't remember that.
I don't either, but it had an elementary school. The church has been there forever. Chester Bros store. That's a classic.
Yeah. And then, Leroy with the Catholic Church and the Catechism. Everybody had to go to Catechism.
Mm-hmm.
And the Catholic Church, and then Bros grocery store across. I guess that's been there for a long time.
That's been there for a while. I don't know how long. But
and that was a small little town.
So that's not Chester Bros. There's another Bros.
No, there's another Bros.
Otis Bro. Yes.
Otis Bro.
In Leroy. Chester was in Andrew.
And then when I'd go out riding with Daddy, he'd stop at Chester Bros. And Chester was a real big, bulky man. Mm-hmm. He was a World War II vet.
Yeah.
And he would fix your flat tires. He would, change the oil. He had
gas
one
in
of
your
those
car.
drive up, and he'd pick your car up on these Rams. And
he would, when we would come in as kids, he'd give us chocolate pop.
Yep, chocolate soldier.
Chocolate soldier.
And moon pies.
And moon pies.
I'd go sit in the corner, and while they were talking and drinking beer at the bar, I'd go sit in the corner and look at this great big picture of Custer's Last Stand.
Yes,
it's famous.
Yes.
It's probably the size of that mirror there.
Yeah.
And I'd just look at every detail of the picture until it was time to go. And then I'd go home and draw a picture of it. I like drawing. I loved drawing when I was little.
I know. And he couldn't do without Scotch tape. Or was it freezer tape? Freezer tape, sorry.
Yeah. I'd make my own type. My mother would throw away cardboard cereal boxes. I'd go take them out of the trash can and get scissors and masking tape and cut out and make my own little trucks and houses. And
He would.
So y'all all went to Indian Bayou as kids?
get the school bus, but to ride the school bus.
Or we rode our horses. On the last day, we were allowed.
I never did
You
that.
never did that?
No.
Oh, yeah. Well, Blaine and I did. So on the last day of school, half a day, all you do is go get your report card. So we were allowed to ride our horses to school. So Papa would saddle up the horses, and Blaine and I would ride our horses and then come back. And the pickup truck was all ready to go to Holly Beach.
Oh yeah, Holly
The
Beach.
last day of school, every single year, we went to Holly Beach.
Cajun Riviera.
Occasionally. No.
Before we go on, do you want to just go down your list and kind of like
Okay.
take the topics that way so we don't get too lost?
Okay.
I
Well,
I
that's
guess
just, while we're on
some of the
Holly
stuff-
Beach.
And just real quick, didn't you tell me something about y'all taking the bell at Indian Bayou, and your dad would shine it every
Take the what?
the bell
Bell.
the bell at Indian Bayou.
Oh, the bell? No. I don't
At
know.
Indian Bayou, there's a little bell right when you
Yeah.
drive in.
Yeah.
It was you or somebody that told me
Yeah, it wasn't me.
that
I don't know. Pop?
your
My
dad would
dad.
take
The bell and
bell.
shine it?
and every Friday or like the end of the school.
Oh, interesting.
Oh.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure
Somebody
who told
told
you.
me that.
Yeah, it's
We have to
possible.
find out. That would
Yeah.
be something good to know.
Or maybe I'm thinking of my, I don't know, because my mom's grandma
Okay.
also went to Indian Bayou.
Oh,
So
okay.
maybe I'm.
Maybe she might have told you that. Well, yeah, but Holly Beach, so we stop at Chester Bros and get inner tubes.
Oh, yeah.
You know, all used inner tubes out of a tire from tractors, and then he'd patch them wherever, and then we'd have that to ride on the waves, blow it up with air.
And they were huge.
yeah.
Huge. They
So
were
how
fun.
we fit 5 kids, 2 adults, 5 inner tubes in the back of a little truck? I'm not sure. I don't
Yeah,
know.
we always rode on the back. You know, that's
Oh,
against the
in the
law
back.
now.
Oh yeah, it's like outlaw.
We can't do
now.
that now.
Against, what do you mean?
You can't put kids in the back of a pickup truck and
Oh,
ride
yeah,
into.
no.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we covered like the history we know about how they came out here and formed and everything. So the earliest childhood memories of farm life.
We kind of talked about that. It was we occupied ourselves with what was in front of us.
Yeah, horses.
You know, horses.
our local swimming pool.
Our local swimming pool, the flume.
The flume.
The flume.
What's a flume?
Well, okay, so this big Hunter Canal. It's if you leave Pop-Pop's house, Henry Ash's house, heading toward Andrew, you're going to cross the Grand Mary, which was a big bayou. And so the Hunter Canal would come up to the Grand Mary, and you had to cross it some kind of way. So they made a crossing. What else? What's that other word for flume? It's an English word where you cross over something. Anyway, they would make a big aqueduct, something like that. They'd make, huh?
Aqueduct?
Aqueduct.
Aqueduct.
It's kind of like an aqueduct where the bottom of it was made with all cedar planks, the whole floor of it, and then the walls were made with cedar wood, pitched wood, so that it was like a something to cover the wa-
enclosed-
huh? Like something to cross the water over the Grand Mary River. Well, that was our swimming pool. We'd walk from the house, climb up the levee, and they would have a walkboard on each end to walk across for the watermen to cross over and check. So that would be our diving board. We walk on those boards and we
Yeah.
jump into this. So it was a swimming pool made with a wooden bottom and wooden sides.
But
It
if the
wasn't
water
really-
was flowing too hard, when we jump in, we would end up going, and Papa would have to jump in and come get us.
Yeah. And we'd have mud fights because on both sides of that wooden flume was the canal made out of dirt.
Oh, you're
So we just get mud with our hands,
Uh-huh.
like snowball fights, and we throw at each other
Oh, fun.
or ride horses.
Oh yeah, or play games, or climb trees, or play hide and seek, or
Yeah.
those things that play ball. I mean, you
Yeah.
know,
Did
play
you
ball.
Did you have like any sort of like homemade dolls or anything?
Aunt Vicki never played with dolls. I was, Mama, Papa, and Granny knew better than to get me a doll for anything. If they had a bike, I wanted a bike. One year we had bow and arrows. Well, I bet, don't you give me a doll, I want a bow and arrow. I mean, no dolls. No. Oh, but Mama would make us kites.
Kites?
Remember?
No, I don't. I remember flying kites.
She would take some material, and you know, her glue was made with flour and water. We didn't have glue. Flour, you
Yeah.
mix flour with water, and it gets real sticky, and it dries. She would make us kites with old material. She'd make the tail with old material. She'd get some sticks, branches, and glued it on with flour and water.
Yeah, I just remember going with Dad. Just loving to go with Dad. He'd take me everywhere he went. Mm-hmm. I guess he did it with all the boys.
Oh, he did.
But I
Well,
just
not
remember
me, I
him,
was
you know,
like,
like going to
I was-
Chester Bros, going to feed, bringing the truck full of hay to the cattle, riding on the tractor, riding on the combine, going swimming in the flume.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the people that stand out that we knew in our community?
In our community?
Yeah, of course, Non is the first thing that comes
Yeah,
to mind. Non
yeah.
was Mama's hired maid who came help her once a week.
Yes.
She said,
Yes, she was
how'd
there.
she say that? Oh, sha.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, wait. She said, oh, wait, Madame Ruru.
Madame, I know.
And
She was with Mama for 30
wife. Will
years.
was one of the watermen who worked on the Hunter Canal.
Okay.
So she lived in that town, Andrew. And so she was Mama's maid.
So she was y'all's mom's maid?
Yeah.
Okay, so she'd come to y'all's house once a
Yeah.
week or something.
Yeah.
To help with like cleaning.
Yeah,
and stuff?
clean.
Yeah. And when Mama had a huge spring cleaning, because people used to do that back then. Spring clean. They took all their curtains, their mattresses, their blinds outside, and they just cleaned and put everything back. Well, she came for 2 or 3 days in a row to help Mama do that because it was a big job. Big
Oh, when
job.
they'd butcher, like a lot of the ducks. Remember Muscova duck? She'd
Oh,
come
yeah.
help with that.
Yeah,
She'd
would
take
help
some,
with that.
they give
Yeah.
her some ducks.
Yeah, yeah. So speaking of butcher, you know, whenever they had no refrigerator. Remember, Daddy would tell us this story. So they had no refrigeration. So when they butchered, there was no way to preserve the meat. So
Yeah.
a community would get together with so many families and butcher one person's calf or cow. And everybody who was there got a piece of that calf. Because they couldn't preserve it.
Yeah.
But of course, the one who owned it got the best pieces, you know, the roast and the whatever. And then when that person went to the next house, the family owned the animal, well, they got the best piece, but everybody who helped got other smaller
Yeah,
pieces,
yeah.
and that they rotated all butchering season. I know that was until refrigeration.
And then they had some of it. I remember Daddy having a big jar. They put pork meat,
Yeah.
salted. They would salt the
Salt,
meat down.
yeah.
I don't know how long that would last, but they would
And-
salt the meat down in big jars.
Or pork lard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Teo. Well, speaking of, okay, how did we learn French? Well, when my grandfather's, I don't remember. The only thing I remember about it's shame,
Yeah.
but the only thing I remember about Papa Reaux in this house was sitting in
You
this
mean,
chair
Papa
smoking.
Broussard.
Papa Broussard, I mean, smoking a cigarette.
Smoking a cigarette.
That's all I can remember
Yes.
with him.
And wait.
And Papa Reaux, the only thing I remember about him is walking up the front porch and him sitting smoking a pipe. I don't remember them dying or a funeral.
Yeah. Now, I remember Papa Broussard and Maman Broussard here because I practically lived here. I was here all the time. Papa Broussard smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day. And he was a very, very quiet man. He never would fuss. He never would, very quiet. And one story Granny likes to tell is it doesn't matter how hot it was. He never took his shoes off. He'd come in from work with those big shoes that he had. He'd, take a bath, then he'd put his shoes back on. And he wouldn't take them off before he went to bed. Mama laughs about that. He liked his shoes.
So we'd sleep. I know when both grandparents. I remember sleeping here with my mom.
Yeah.
and sleeping at Mom Reaux's house also once their husbands died,
Yeah,
grandfathers died.
yeah.
I guess
Well, that's
for
when
a
I
season
stayed.
you'd sleep at their house after the death of their.
Yeah, that's when I stayed the most when Papa Broussard died. I was in high school.
Yeah,
I'd
okay.
get off the bus here on Monday nights. I'd get on the bus Monday morning at home.
Yeah.
I'd get off the bus here Monday night. I wouldn't go back home until she kind of
Yeah.
until Friday afternoon. I went back home. But yeah.
And that's where I had to learn French, was sleeping at my Mom Reaux's. I don't remember so much sleeping here as sleeping over there. I guess because I just would walk across the field to her.
Yeah, maybe so.
But I remember having to learn French so that I could communicate with my grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
So as kids, did y'all speak? Like, did any of your parents or you speak French?
Our parents spoke
oh yeah, they
French,
spoke a lot of French when they'd have
but
company
not
over. Yeah.
to us, with us.
Well, Daddy would on the farm. Well,
On the farm,
we would
yeah.
because I'd go with Daddy and he'd stop at the bar or grocery bros and everybody was speaking French.
Yeah.
You know, and
But not me. I never.
Yeah,
he
okay.
never spoke French because I wasn't with him. I was in the house cleaning.
Right. And then he put me working with our hired man Theo Vincent. Theo could only speak French too, so he purposely put me with him every day so that I had to speak
I'd have to
French,
speak
or we
French.
couldn't get along.
Yeah. Yeah.
And while we're on it, I remember my mom not only the buggy, but I remember this great big water cistern she had on the back of the house, rainwater that would catch rainwater. It was big. I remember it being real big.
It was
I guess
huge.
Being a small
well,
person,
being
it was
small.
big,
Yeah, right.
But she'd wash her hair. I remember she'd wash her hair. It was tall enough to where she could stand under it and wash her hair
wash
with
her hair.
rainwater.
Yeah. But Mom Reaux was a very, very talented. She was an artist. She did everything. She made quilts. She did those blankets up there. That was part of the Reaux. See, on the top shelf, those cotton blankets, the brown cotton blankets. The Labrie family, which she's from Kaplan, the Labrie family from Kaplan.
So
They had.
this is Tessila.
Tessila.
And her she's a Labrie. That's her maiden name.
Yes.
So this is y'all's grandma?
Yes. Yes.
Your
Dad's mama. Papap's mama. So the Labrie family had a loom.
Oh, I didn't know.
And it stayed at some place instead of carrying that big wooden loom all
Yeah.
over. So the loom stayed at one of the Labrie homes. And whenever my mom needed her blanket, she had carded her cotton, with the cord. She'd spit. Then they'd take it and they would make the blankets there. So those are 3 blankets right there. The brown cotton blankets. So she wove, she quilted, she was a ceramist. She did this table. This table, the bottom of this table, was their fireplace at my Mom Reaux's
you told
house.
me that. I think I remember that.
The bottom of the fire.
Yeah.
I do remember it. When they took down the fireplace because of termites, I think, which is why they took down this one. It broke. That beautiful marble slab broke at the bottom. And so she took a hammer. She made... Something's wrong? No?
No, I was just looking at the.
Oh, at the table. I thought you were looking at the wire. So she took a hammer, she broke it all up, and she made the table. She tatted. You know what tatting is? Okay. It's making lace with a shuttle. I'll show you before you leave. She just did whatever. She would take old stockings and she would braid it into rugs. She would braid the stockings into long, and then she would, turn it into rugs. I know. We had some forever until they wore out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she was anything she had, she made something with.
It smells good though.
I know,
Smells
you
tarts.
smell those tarts? Oops. It's kind of,
Cool.
I know, it's kind of hard because I put
Might have to push it home.
yeah, I put let me see if I can get it. There you go. I put some insulation and it kind of made it too tight. I have to
yeah.
take it off and put some smaller one, I think.
How do you spell Tessila? It's just
T-E-S-I-L-A.
T-E-S-I-L.
We've seen it spelled a couple of different ways, but that's how I've spelled it. Now, Oculi, Ferdinand, Daddy, Blaine, I'm going down the... Little Blaine, they're all buried right there in Leroy.
Oh, really? Oculi too?
Yeah, Oculi, they took
It was like 5 minutes
one of the
long.
members of the family. I don't know where he was, but he's now in Leroy.
Oh, well, he may have been buried
If
over
the-
there.
I don't know.
Maybe there's a maximum length of video.
What about Ulysses? Are they buried there too? Ulysses?
Yes, Ulysses is buried there. Yes,
So just keep that in mind.
Ulysses
But it is
and
Mm-hmm.
recording now if the red dot's flashing. Okay.
You can see like the little battery at the bottom, and it's in orange right now.
So, while it's coming to my mind, I remember, going with Daddy everywhere, but at least, I guess, once a week, Mama would go to Kaplan to the drugstore. I guess she was taking a lot of medication at one time. And I'd go with her and buy me the latest comic book of either Batman,
Oh, yes, the
Superman,
comic books.
Spider-Man, or Fantastic
yes.
Four. And so about, I don't know, it was after Yvonne and I got married. I remember we went to Granny's one time, and I guess I was looking for some toys for the little kids in her closet, and there was a box of the old comic books.
Oh, my God.
And I just said, God, yeah, I remember. So, like, years later, here I'm watching American Pickers, where they're selling these comic books for thousands of dollars.
Did you go back?
And I called Mom, she said, well, I threw that away.
Oh no!
I said, well, y'all didn't want them. Y'all had it here forever.
Oh no! Oh my goodness!
They weren't in great shape, but
Wow. For
Yeah.
like thousands of dollars?
yeah,
Well,
some
I
of
don't
them, if it's really tin's the best condition, they'll sell for some of them $20,000, $30,000 for the first editions of Spider-Man and
She
Batman.
must have threw away quite a lot.
Mine wouldn't. Those wouldn't have been worth that.
Yeah, you never know.
But yeah.
You never know. And y'all's little horse and men with the little hard plastic.
Right. There was the Bonanza series.
Yes,
Each one
yes.
had a Bonanza series, and then Rifleman. That's
Yeah.
the TV shows we'd watch, right?
Yes.
But of course, Lawrence Welk and Ed Sullivan, except when the Beatles came on.
Oh.
I don't know if you remember that. They wouldn't let us watch it. You don't remember
No,
that?
I don't remember
I
that.
do remember that.
The Beatles?
The Beatles,
Your parents
when they were
watching?
hippies. I mean, they were like,
Yeah.
and they were starting
didn't
playing
like
on
it
the Ed
anyway,
Sullivan
that's
show,
okay.
and it seems like I remember them turning the television off. Okay.
That's funny. That
And
is funny.
Bonanza, all the old Gunsmoke, all the old westerns. Roy Rogers and Dale Evans.
Oh, Roy Rogers. Yeah.
Was the Lone Ranger?
Huh?
The Lone Ranger?
Yeah, the Lone Ranger too.
And you can see those now on some
Yeah,
of these
yeah.
channels. They're bringing out these old westerns.
Yeah, so Kaplan, we did most of our business in Kaplan. I mean, of course we had Chester Bros, but we also had Seymour's IG store,
After a while, yeah.
which was at the end of Vicky's Road here. The building's not there no more, right?
No.
But it was a grocery store, and because you were a farmer, you could put your groceries on credit. You didn't have to pay for it right away. And they'd have a little piece of paper, a tab, and they'd put down everything you'd buy. At the end of the month, you'd go pay them. But they had the grocery store, a feed store,
And a bar.
and a bar, and later a barbershop.
Oh, I don't remember. the bar.
Rodney's son
Oh, yes.
opened the barbershop.
Okay.
What was his name? Anyway, he opened the store in Kaplan. He moved to Kaplan.
Yeah.
So you did all your business right there. You
Right
went and
there.
bought groceries, feed for the cow, animals. You went to the bar, and then you went cut your hair, and you went home.
There was a barbershop in Leroy.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Grocery
Don't tell
store.
me that.
Remember, that's
Or
where
Mr.
Daddy would
Rene.
take them get their hair cut.
Yeah, he'd always cut you with his big razor. He had these big razors. And he'd always cut you on there, right here.
Did it hurt?
No.
No.
That's
And
funny.
then Kaplan we'd go to bring our crop. And then Daddy owned a part of the tractor dealership. My daddy,
Massey Ferguson.
Massey Ferguson Tractors. Him and a couple of other people owned the dealership. So we'd go there for that. We'd go there for feeding seed to plant our crops, to buy the seed. We go there to bring our crops. Most of the time, we go bring our cut harvest to Kaplan, more so than Crawley or Abbeville. They had 3 or 4 rice mills just in Kaplan
Yeah.
in the heyday.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Lily, can you go? Oh, never mind. I'll have to find it.
What else is on your list?
Well, let's see.
What about you? Did you have questions?
I was just going to ask about the flood of 1940. Did you have some pictures of that?
All I can tell you is secondhand stories.
Yeah.
So here, and this is stories that Mama told me. So that flood, I don't even remember how many inches they said, but it was pretty high. So we're on a
It's 15 minutes
Oh, okay.
because it started again.
Okay, that's fine.
we're on a ridge here. This whole I'm really high.
Yeah.
So when that flood happened, we stayed dry. We stayed dry, but everybody outside of the ridge did not. So Granny, Mama remembers people starting to show up in their wagons with their chickens, their cows, leading their cows, their horses, their children, blankets, pillows, anything. You know, they would kill the chickens to feed everybody. They would. Mama says she will never forget waking up early in the morning and every floor space of this house had a child or an adult or an animal in this house because they couldn't stay where they were. So she remembers that story. She tells that story often. She told the story often. Yeah. Then when the water went down, they eventually all went away. That must have been something.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to wake up in your house with like
But
this many people.
they were on the floors. They were on the, on the couches, because they had no place else to go. I mean, they had to save their stuff. But I don't remember any of the stories. I don't remember Daddy telling too many stories about the flood.
Okay.
Maybe Randy might remember, but I don't.
Okay. Let me just stop the recording here to reset so that we don't have